Hi, everyone. Welcome again to our podcast, Don't Blame the CRM. My name is Mikko. I'm one of the co-founders and product manager at Vainu. Today, we have a guest from a company called Supermetrics, Henri Ripatti, who's leading their SalesOps function. Welcome, Henri.
Thank you, Mikko, and great to be here. So yeah, I'm Henri Ripatti. I've been 2 years in Supermetrics now and leading the SalesOps team currently.
Awesome to have you. Supermetrics is definitely, I think, one of the fastest growing SaaS companies, definitely in Finland, also in the Nordics, and maybe even worldwide. You've been growing super fast. So you mentioned you're head of SalesOps. Do you have revenue ops as well at Supermetrics, or is SalesOps sort of covering also CS ops and marketing ops and finance ops?
Yeah, we don't have an official revenue ops team, but SalesOps is actually covering the customer success, and then we have a marketing operation team inside, and I think we do a lot of collaboration with the finance team and BI team. So in general, we have many of the responsibilities of the revenue ops team. Sounds
good. And so that everybody gets the context, how big is Supermetrics these days in terms of, for example, number of employees, and maybe you can talk about a little bit about the growth rate because you've been growing so fast.
Yeah, so we have around 300 employees currently. Our ARR is over 50 million currently, and so we'll be growing around 40% yearly in the past few years.
Sounds good. So it's a big company hitting 50 million in non-recurring revenue. And you have a background as a Salesforce consultant, and I guess that was one of the reasons why you decided to join Supermetrics. I assume you're using Salesforce as a CRM. How much of your work as SalesOps leader is about Salesforce and setting it up for sales teams and CS teams? Like, how would you say that is it 80% of the time goes into optimizing and building Salesforce instance for Supermetrics?
I think it depends a lot. When I started, there was a lot of, let's say, legacy things, cleaning and so on. So there was at start a lot of time went to the Salesforce and upkeeping it. And let's say in general, I think currently maybe 30, 40, 50% of the team's time goes to Salesforce or tasks related to Salesforce. So and it's not only sales side, but also we have different tools integrated to it. So I think the upkeep of Salesforce is taking a lot of our time currently.
Yep. And how big is your SalesOps team? And you could also include enablement team if you have one, because 50 million in annual recurring revenue. How big is SalesOps team for that?
Yeah, so we currently have basically one sales enablement person, then one who's handling the customer success operations side. Then we have a coordinator and an analyst in the team, and then we have one developer in the team currently. And one trainee. So currently the team is 7 persons. Yeah.
So it's actually quite lean and not a super big team. I've had some guests where they're definitely not on 50 million annual recurring revenue yet, and they have 10 plus people in the team. And you also cover enablement as well. So maybe you can tell us a little bit about the tech stack. You use Salesforce, and that's the CRM. And I would imagine that's where you handle and orchestrate your sort of go-to-market activities, sales and CS and marketing. What else do you have other than Salesforce? Do you have like a data warehouse or something like that for ops?
Yeah, let's say we have a ton of smaller tools integrated to Salesforce. But then let's say the largest is, of course, a marketing automation tool. Then it's integrated to our licensing system, our billing system, or basically BigQuery, so our data warehouse, and basically moving data between those. Then we have cadency tools, let's say different kind of webinar tools linked to our Salesforce, data enrichment tools, automated DocuSign or documentation creation tools, and so on. So we actually have, I think last time I counted, it was around 30 different tools at least integrated to Salesforce.
Yeah, 30 tools integrated with Salesforce. And then I guess the data is flowing back and forth between Salesforce and BigQuery, right?
Yeah. So
sounds good. Is your team also owning the tools and technologies. So I would assume so that your team is the one that is responsible for the technology stack and how those tools are implemented, how they're integrated, and also how you onboard all the users for those tools.
Yeah, so let's say the smaller tools that are directly linked to Salesforce. So those are usually owned by us. Then there's few, let's say, webinar tools or some form tools or something like this that are the marketing team. But let's say all the sales-related ones are actually owned by us also. So.
Yep. And you spent some years as a Salesforce consultant, so you have seen lots of different type of customers. Was Supermetrics the first sort of SaaS scale up for you, and how was that sort of jump from going from being a Salesforce consultant going into very fast growing SaaS scale up? Like, was that an easy transition, or did you have lots of surprises and lots of new things to learn?
Yeah, I think at least one when I was a consultant was that basically I think every time you go into a new customer, they always said that, yeah, our sales is different and so on. And at the end, I think sales was quite the same in all of the different companies. And then when I joined the SaaS company for the first time, especially us, where we have a really product-led growth background. So I thought it's the same thing, that it's kind of at the end, it's quite similar to sales. But to be honest, there is a big learning curve, especially it's the fast pace of the SaaS industry. Puts also to the, let's say, the product-led growth. So there is, I think, a lot of learning to me when I started there. So and still is, I think.
What are some of the examples? Of course, there's lots of SaaS terms, and I guess then PLG is, I guess, quite SaaS specific thing, and PLG means product-led growth, so that you have lots of free users, and then you try to convert those free users into paid customers and so on. Was it sort of that customer journey part and all the new terms? Is that what you mean by lots of new things to learn?
I think at the start when I saw the environment started, one big thing was this kind of the sheer amount of trials and leads we get in, that we have to automate it. We cannot send everything to sales. We have to automate this part of it. And basically, let's say that in the day-to-day action, the automation and keeping that up to date so it works, especially when the team is growing all the time. So all the right reps get the right leads and so on. That is, let's say, in a day-to-day term, a big learning at start, and also the sheer size of the different tools we use to keep them like integrated and working even together. So those things. And then I think in bigger picture, it's the basically the forward looking at, it's not just, let's say, the transactional sales. It can be sometimes really small deals that go fast. So it's I would say, at least as far as started with a lot of by looking at the leads, not so much like in the traditional industry, to looking at the opportunities itself. I think that's also a little bit changing on our side when we go to the enterprise business, but those are few things I think in the sales process. And then in general also the product-led growth side, so how to take that in account with the sales-led motion. So especially in cases where sales start a conversation or something, and then suddenly they buy a self-service and so on, to take these in account. So these are some things that was some big learning to me.
Yeah, let's talk about that flow of free trials and free users. I know, and you also mentioned that there's lots of them on a monthly basis. At least, I guess it's fair to say that thousands of free trials starting every month. And obviously that's lots of volume, and then salespeople can jump into those opportunities and work with them. And I guess they need to be really good at picking the right ones. And then now I know that you have been also building the enterprise sales team, meaning that you have bigger cases, bigger deal values. How do you split your time between sort of the PLG stuff, where you have lots of volume, lots of free users, and maybe it's a no-touch, low-touch game on that end, and then on the other hand, you have a real enterprise sales business? Like, are you mainly focusing on one of them, or do you cover both of them? How would you describe that?
Yeah, let's say our SalesOps side is focusing more on the sales-led, so the enterprise deals, and I think the big part of the time goes to actually figuring out where goes the difference. So when should we start the sales motion, or just keep it to the self-serve side? So I think that is one of the interesting and one of the things that takes a lot of time from the SalesOps team, since that also changed during the time and during the kind of needs of the customer and also our own sales teams, like size and sales motions we are doing. So I think it's actually the part where you have to figure out which sales way should we use. So.
Yeah. And what is your current thinking on that? Like, do you mainly look at, I mean, thousands of free trials, and you at least know the individual who starts the trial, you know the email address, and maybe you know the behavior, how they use the app, and then you might know something about the company behind that person, industry size, and their existing technology stack, maybe something about their marketing spend and so on. Do you mainly look at like individual things such as behavior, or do you also look at sort of account level insights when you make that decision when and how should sales get involved with those free trials?
Well, I think that, let's say, the biggest part for us is what they do during the trial, and let's say in some cases when they use a premier feature, something like this is quite straightforward, then it goes to sales, but then there is let's say these differences like how much they use the trial and so on, that we look, and then also the firmographic data. So what is the size of the company, and what industries they are in, and so on. So I think it's a combination of both, and we're also having a project going around that turning the AE to kind of mapping the data around it. So moving away from, let's say, rule-based, that's okay, it's this kind of industry size or this industry or this company size or these actions they are doing, but actually looking at more machine learning and more statistic way on who should we contact and not.
Yeah. And let's say that I start a free trial today. I type in my email address. Do I end up right away in your Salesforce, and do I end up being a lead or a contact in your Salesforce, or am I still on that marketing automation side? How does that flow work?
So basically, start you're on the marketing automation side, and when certain attributes are done during a trial, then you move to basically the Salesforce and sales side. So that is the current setup there.
And then when I go as a contact, I move from marketing automation to Salesforce. Is that when the salesperson gets notified and they will jump into that opportunity and start working on it? Is that sort of how you have built it inside the tools?
Yeah, basically then there's actually when you go to Salesforce, it's still, you're not still automatically assigned, but there is these few levels that we kind of put the data to Salesforce, and then when, let's say, more attribute is done, then you go to the salesperson, and then it also depends on are you existing customer who takes a new trial, or are you totally new customer, and is there outbound motion going to you? So there's actually then let's say more automations and rules inside Salesforce to get it to the right rep.
Yep. And even though you're not using HubSpot, what are you using on the marketing automation side? You said Bloomreach? Yeah,
Bloomreach. So yeah, it's let's say I think a hybrid of CDP also values there. So since we have quite a high volume, a lot of data requirements to our marketing side, so that's why we're using that.
What are your thoughts about lead objects? Because I've spoken with lots of RevOps people, and many of them use Salesforce as a CRM, and then they use HubSpot for marketing automation. And in HubSpot, you don't really have something called lead object. You have contacts, and then you have companies or accounts, I guess. You have deals. And I think it's quite easy to map like accounts in Salesforce or companies in HubSpot. Opportunities in Salesforce, they equal to deals in HubSpot, and then contact is contact. But you don't really have anything for lead object. How should lead object be used? I mean, you have a background as a Salesforce consultant, so this is interesting for all people using Salesforce. What are your thoughts about lead?
I think this is an eternal conversation around it. Like, I would say in general, I think lead should be basically basically it's a new lead to get a sales motion coming on, and when there is certainly a, let's say, opportunity to sell. I think in different companies that's then a different point where you convert it to a account and contact, and then basically when there's a sales case, then you turn it to a contact. But then on the other hand, like in the technical side and on the account management side, basically because the contacts are linked to those certain accounts, there's benefits also turning leads straight away to contacts. So like my honest answer, it depends a lot on what is kind of the most important thing. Like if it's a longer sales cycle, there's a lot of stakeholders, then I think it's better to turn them to contact so that you have everything on the kind of more account-based view. And when you're actually selling more transactional deals and let's say there's not so many stakeholders per one account, then keeping it lead for longer is basically maybe a better option. But I think it's really dependent on the cases there, and I think that's always a little bit of a struggle on the let's say the attributes of what is actually lead and when it turns to opportunity and so on, when you should actually do this turn. So there's definitely not one straight answer to that, but
yeah, definitely not one answer only. But I mean, this was already good that you have some sort of rule of thumb that if you have like longer sales cycle and lots of stakeholders, then it might be smart to convert them into contacts right away. And then if it's transactional sales, not tons of stakeholders, keeping it as a lead a little bit longer might be the way to go. I think that's already a good sort of a starting point, because I feel that there's so many people struggling with this question these days.
Yeah, and I think that's also like in the start, should you already like straight create them as contacts if you know the like when I discussed this with different people, one is that if you know the account like 100% sure, you should already put them to contact, so that there's also like a technical side what you can do when it's contact versus a lead, like on the account level. So but yeah, I think we could discuss it for 3 hours. But I would say that it depends so much on the company and what is kind of the sales process there.
Yeah. Let's talk about the technology stack. 30 tools integrated with Salesforce. That's quite a few tools, especially when the team is 7 people at the moment. Some people, they have been predicting that this is the year of sort of tech stack consolidation. Do you think that's going to be the case? If we start with that question, do you think there will be sort of consolidation happening in terms of technology stack, because 30 integrations is quite a few to handle?
Yeah, I would basically hope for that, and I think it should be. I think there's now a lot of tools that have been just bought for some certain reason, and now basically when you actually start looking at a lot of them overlap, then it's sometimes really tough thinking on the side that okay, this can do the same thing, but does it do as well as the tool you have there? But I think there's a lot of overlap between the tools also. And then in general, just that do we need to integrate even all those tools to Salesforce that we have there? But I would say that it's going to drop like in the future, the amount.
Because it's been one of the predictions people make. Do you have any other sort of trends in mind in terms of ops, both sales ops and revenue ops? Something that you feel most companies and most ops professionals should keep an eye on, something that you see is sort of about to become very important for ops? Any other trends other than, for example, technology stack consolidation?
Well, I think one is the general the RevOps that let's say in my time, how much time I use a week, more and more of my time goes to actually talking with finance, BI team, marketing team. So basically, it's not even the title of SalesOps, that it's more and more about the whole company level. And I think it goes also to tech stack that all the tools would work together and they would be bought like uniformly so that everybody can use them, and it doesn't just integrate to one tool. But basically, I think it's also about that it doesn't just serve SalesOps, but basically it serves the whole business as whole. So I think it's a little bit tied to those two things also, that it's not just one function's operations, but it's more about how they function together. So
yep. Yeah, so going from sort of siloed ops into centralized ops, meaning that going from sales ops and CS ops and marketing ops into revenue ops makes a lot of sense. Let's talk about ICP, ideal customer profile. I would assume that you have some sort of definition for ICP, but I'm very keen on knowing who's actually deciding that. Is it sort of coming from the company leadership? I think you have 2 CEOs these days. Is it coming from them, or is it coming from sales or from product, or is SalesOps playing an important role when it comes to defining your ideal customer profile and those segments that you go after?
Yeah, I think for us it's combination of like product team, marketing team, sales team of setting them up, and I think we have because we have also interesting because our main focus is marketing data, but then it's also data, so we have kind of split between that. The idea can be on the data side if we talk about roles and company like functions, that it can be data side or marketing side. So actually I think it's basically combination of those functions deciding on that. So.
And what is your ICP roughly? How would you describe in terms of like the type of companies you go after? So not so much about buyer personas, but the type of companies you want to do business with.
Yeah, well, let's say our main part is basically the marketing mix and how to solve that. So it's companies who use a lot of marketing, especially, and nowadays I think every company uses a lot of marketing, use many different funnels. So companies who spend a lot of marketing, so e-commerce, will be B2C. Any company that has marketing spend high, and of course then there's some industry where you kind of know that it's going to happen and so on. But let's say the company size, and that doesn't actually reflect nowadays so much, maybe with the marketing spend. So it indicates that, but that's not so important for us.
Yeah. So companies that are investing in marketing using many different channels, so it's definitely quite broad. Do you feel that the data that you have in Salesforce reflects that ICP well? Do you think it's easy for people to go in and look at certain properties or attributes, data points in Salesforce to define for every account that yes, this company is an ICP account for us? Like, do you feel that your Salesforce data is sort of reflecting the reality so that it's easy for people to make that decision if the company is an ICP account or not?
I think in some cases, like I said, traditionally the account enrichment or company enrichment data is like industry, size of revenue, size of employees. It kind of indicates that if it's certain industries or certain side, they usually have then a large marketing budget or use a lot of ad spend. But I think those are a little bit also like the industries are usually quite old traditional industry segments there, which don't go one-to-one who are kind of ICP. So they can be from several different industries, but they have e-commerce and so on. So I think like it doesn't reflect that like 100%, but you can give like indicative data that okay, this should be there, but I think it's not so accurate at the end.
Yeah, I guess I mean we know that of course super well. That's why we developed Vainu custom industry, because we felt that traditional standard industry codes simply are not good enough, at least not good enough and not accurate enough for SaaS companies, for example, because they typically go after like very specific segments and they want to know what type of e-commerce business it is, and not only knowing that hey, this is a retail company, but they want to know that this is e-commerce, fashion, and things like that. Is technographic data important for you? I would imagine that it plays some role, and by technographics I mean all the information about companies and what tools and technologies they have in use. Of course, there's plenty of providers, Vainu of course being one of them, but there's Built With and Vapalizer and lots of providers who provide technographic data, what type of tools they use. Do you use that type of information in your ICP definition, or do you look at that type of data when you work in ops?
Yeah, in let's say those cases where, because our tool is connected to certain data warehouses and so on, if we have the information the customer or the account is using certain data warehouses, that's really indicative of us, because it tells that we can sell data warehouse products there. So in many cases it's a good thing and really accurate on that side. Then in otherwise it's also like, let's say that if they are using e-commerce tools or some marketing automation tools, that tells that they usually also use marketing and use resources on marketing. So that's also kind of another way of looking at it. So I think that tells us much more sometimes than the industry, for example, or the employee or revenue.
Yeah, and I think knowing e-commerce and marketing automation tools, that's quite easy for, I guess, for all vendors, because you can simply look at the website and certain scripts on the site to detect if they use HubSpot or if they use Shopify or Magento and so on. Data warehouses, that's more tricky, I feel, like knowing if they use Snowflake or BigQuery and so on. How do you solve that? Do you also try to manually populate that information in Salesforce when people speak with other companies, or do you look at job openings, for example, if they mention BigQuery or Snowflake or something? How do you collect that data warehouse data on an account level?
Well, two ways, basically manually, that the salespeople can basically put that value there, or then also some tools provide that. But that's the thing, that then how do they get the data? Is it by they look at the job openings and so on? But I think there's always a little bit how accurate that data is at the end there. But I think we also use the data enrichment tools to track it. But like you said, I think things that are on the website, like marketing automation, e-commerce, it's easy to track. But then I think the data warehouse side, and that's then in like job ads and more guessing or not so accurate there. So there's then always the question mark. Yeah,
I know it in and out myself how tricky it can be. We do it these days that we look at job openings, and often it doesn't always mean that they use Snowflake, even if they mention it in the job openings. But I think you can at least indicate that, well, this company mentions, for example, Snowflake, and they have mentioned it quite a few times lately in their job openings. It's a quite strong indicator that they might have Snowflake in use, or at least some plans for it. But as you said, it's not, and you can't have, of course, 100% coverage worldwide, because there's also lots of companies who might not have those job openings and they still use it.
One input there is like how the sales people then use that data, actually, that they don't start the call that, hey, you use Snowflake, but then you know that you can ask questions around it, that it's also like, okay, if it's not 100% accurate, but you have a good guess at what's happening there. So I think that's also good information, even if we can't be 100% sure of it.
And I think it goes to enablement team and sales leadership. They need to coach how to use that type of data, so that you don't, like I said, just go in and say that, hey, I know that you're using Snowflake and that's why I'm reaching out. But they need to coach the AE or SDR to reach out and say that, hey, I've been looking at your job openings and it seems that you're building things on top of Snowflake, and that's why I felt that it might be a good time to speak. Last topic is stakeholders. I mean, obviously, you said that SalesOps today covers new business and also CS, customer success, and you mainly focus on the enterprise, sort of the sales-led side of the business. So I would imagine VP sales is one important stakeholder. You also mentioned finance and marketing. Like, who are the people you work with on a weekly basis in your role?
That depends a lot of week, but I would say one interesting, I think, in our companies, I work a lot with the BI team, and that's something like, I think we have tons of data and how to use it and so on. So I think that is one of the interesting parts that I actually, when I look at my calendar, I have a lot of work with the BI team, because we need their help to kind of map the customers we have, the who should we target and so on. But then, of course, marketing team generally about, let's say, the lead scoring or then new campaigns and so on. And then also the other side is the webinars and things like that. So there's a lot of day-to-day activities with them, but also the different kind of project going on. In the finance side, it's more about also like also how to combine the sales data and the PLGs, or the kind of self-service data and the revenue data from there. So that's a lot of that side, and also then like the integrations with our finance or like invoicing tools and so on. I would say those are, and then of course like our development teams with the integrations there. But yeah, like then of course customer success, but it's part of the team kind of already that we have the person there. So I always forget to mention that there's a stakeholder.
Yeah. You mentioned BI, business intelligence team. Just so that I understand the organizational setup, who are you reporting to as a director of SalesOps? Who are you reporting to?
Yeah, so I report to VP of Sales.
Yep. And how about this BI team? Are they also reporting to VP Sales, or who are they reporting to?
No, they are going to CFO. So
it's more that what are some of the things the BI team is doing together with you? Like you mentioned, analyzing existing customers, building maybe segments, cohorts, or is sort of that type of work that you do with BI team?
Yeah, so for example, let's technical side, we basically have this solution where we send with our own connector, Supermetrics connector data to our BigQuery every night, and then we return it next morning with kind of enriched data of our customers to Salesforce, since we don't, or Salesforce, the sales start is not made to handle so much data that basically every morning then we have fresh kind of customer usage data in our Salesforce. So that is a setup where the BI team gives a lot of value, and then we have also this other kind of alert system when current customers do mark some attributes or do something in our product, we basically alert our sales rep for, let's say, upsell potential or something like this. So those are like projects where they have helped a lot, like in the business cases and business in general. So those are a few examples.
Yeah. And final question. I mean, I've already mentioned that you have a background as a Salesforce consultant, but I also saw on LinkedIn that back in the days you have done some sales. You have been at Trainer's House, and it's well known for being very good school of sales, and many people doing active sales there. If you think about the role of SalesOps and RevOps, like what do you think is an ideal background? Is it more of the background knowing how sales is done, or is it knowing the SaaS industry if you're about to join a B2B SaaS scale up, or is it the Salesforce and data and technology side of, like, or do you need all of them to become successful in ops at B2B SaaS scale up?
I think that's a really good question. I think the traditional route is that the one salesperson who takes the admin role and develops from there. And I think that is one of the rules, like traditional. So then some analytic person who has maybe sales background. I think it's also not dependent on what the company need at that point. So I think I have not so traditional side, that I have more, let's say, technical background and like a Salesforce focus. But I think at that point, that's something like, let's say we have a sales leadership that has a lot of experience in SaaS and so on. So basically, I would say when I started, my goal was to kind of fulfill those needs they have, and basically they have there, and during the time, hopefully I've learned also about the sales side then to develop that side. But I think it's basically probably the role is fulfilled half a year too late, and basically the role is fulfilled then that what is the need at that point. And I think that's in many cases why so the sales rep who goes there. But if we look at our team, there's people from totally different backgrounds. So the CSM operation is handled by old CSM rep. Then we have the sales enabler person who has been a salesperson. Then we have like person who have an analytic and like say Salesforce background also, of like and so I think it's a lot about the different personalities and what do you want. So I think there's so many different functions that you have to do in sales operations that it's more about the prioritization of what are the most important ones of those. So
yep. And I guess diversity is a key, that you have people with different backgrounds. If we have lots of ops people and also marketing ops people in the audience, if they now want to check out Supermetrics and also see how the PLG journey is built, what's the best way for people to get started with Supermetrics? I guess just visit the website and start free trial. Is it that simple?
Visit the website and start free trial there, and let's see how our sales lead scoring process works. Do we get them to Salesforce? So how much do you do to trial? Excellent.
So the address is supermetrics.com and then free trial, and you can see how one of the fastest growing P2B SaaS companies, how they have built the flow and what parts have been automated and when will sales jump into the game. Hey, but once again, big thanks for being part of the podcast, and thanks also for everyone listening to this episode. This was Don't Blame the CRM, and we'll be back with a new episode next week. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.